Hello and welcome to the Opportunity Talks, powered by the EPFL Future Leaders platform. In each episode, we bring you conversations with cutting-edge innovators, disruptors, and dreamers who dare to go off the beaten path and drive meaningful change. In this episode, Laura has a conversation about privacy and ethics with Hamed Haddadi, Chief Scientist at Brave Software and Professor at the Imperial College of London.
Hello, Ahmed. Thank you for joining us today in the Opportunity Talks. Tell us more about you. Who are you? And if you can talk about more about your research, your work, and what you do.
Sure. Hi, I'm Hamed Haddadi. I'm Professor of Human-Centered Systems at Imperial College London. And I'm also the Chief Scientist of Brave Software. So I work generally in the space of networks and systems and applications of privacy and security and machine learning within this environment. So I work on privacy preserving analytics, privacy preserving systems, security in systems, and trying to generally make our devices and our experiences online more secure and private.
This introduction fits very well with the first question, which is literally what is the challenge you decide to focus? You already touched on that, but I guess if you can expand and tell us more about privacy.
Sure, yeah. So one of the main challenges that my work is centered on is making privacy and generally security scalable and accessible to all users. Without the need for super specialized hardware or very fancy applications or very advanced kind of analytics running on their devices. So I'm trying to make privacy and security available while enabling users to benefit from all the novel machine learning applications that are there and available today for example, for personalizing your preferences, or for providing you with recommendations when you're going out and about, and for example, on device assistance. And that's basically the heart of my work.
This is very fascinating. I have to say I am one of the Brave users, so it's very, very interesting. And what you actually say really sounds very like the experience that you get from the other side. But I guess what was your motivation and why? How do you think this is innovative in terms of the work?
Yeah, so growing up at the early stages of the internet, we had some sense of privacy and some sense of ability to ask questions and look at various stuff on the internet without this feeling of constantly being tracked or analyzed or being under surveillance. And this was quickly taken away by a range of various mechanisms. The big tech and the advertising industry, for example, the analytics industry, all the data brokers which are trading our personal data, and also the surveillance economy, either for economics purposes or for political purposes. And this is in a way ineffective because you need to collect large amount of data all the time from users without necessarily providing them with any benefit. So it's kind of costing them resources and also costing the actual industry a lot of resources, while this could be done in a much more effective way, which is the heart of the research that I do.
Mm-hmm. That's brilliant. And I guess now we go in a question that I think we would love to hear now from you. How? So how do you describe the approach, I guess? How do you the value that you put on the privacy and the user that can benefit? How it happens in practice then? What do you do? For instance, if you could give an example even from Brave and
sure.
Think about.
Yes, sure. So I'm a very kind of practical and maybe industrial researcher. So while many approaches to privacy preserving machine learning or systems rely on very sophisticated methods, for example, relying on overly complex cryptographic based approaches or theoretical mathematical approaches to noise addition. In practice, many of these methods are either not scalable because they cost too much to run, or they provide significant damage to the utility of the data that has been collected. So you cannot serve the original purpose, which might have been simply, I don't know, telemetry, understanding customers' interaction with the service in order to provide a better service, or simply for providing simple recommendation systems. So in an industrial setting, for example, in Brave, you have tens of millions of daily active users, and with a range of devices, mobile phones, handsets of different quality and different capability, and desktops. We must achieve the right balance between the privacy, the resources that the user have, and the utility and scalability of the whole approach. So most of our works are really on this space. So we rely on, for example, edge computing techniques. Some of the analytics you can purely do locally. For example, if you're looking at interaction of the users with various services, you can do a big part of that analysis using local device-centered machine learning models. So you get an idea of what's happening, and then you do some sort of broad aggregation. So in a way, you provide privacy by not collecting every single interaction of the users with their device, and you do some clever aggregations, and without necessarily relying on what you call trusted third parties and things like that. And so you kind of try to remove any identifiable information and any tracking information while enabling machine learning driven approaches and services.
So am I correct, because I'm by hearing you, that this idea of scalability has been literally the sort of game changer? So to work around this idea of scalability has been moving the type of kind of data collection and everything, the technology that exists in different type of direction. Is it correct?
100% yes, because going from something that will impact let's say your battery life on the device, if an application is impacting your battery life by 5% during the day, it's already impractical, because it might mean that by the end of the day, before you reach home, your device has run out of battery. So it's already something that you want to either opt out of, or change this device, or maybe drop that privacy protection mechanism altogether, because it's impacting your battery life. So there's scalability on my end as a user, and there's scalability on the service provider for example, for machine learning applications. So so you have to really achieve the right balance between these two.
That's fascinating. Like this one, you nail on a specific concept, and how much that changes a pure leverage of the system. That's very kind of interesting to see how you've been describing. And the other aspect that we really kind of have wanted to have a chat with you within the context of the opportunity talks is the idea that yes, you work at Imperial, so you have a kind of academic profession, but also you're a chief scientist at Brave. And I guess when you talk, you have this type of conversations within academia as well. But what happens when you are in a business? So we would be very curious to know, let's say, the process of getting this work, this research into something that is a product like the Brave software.
Yeah. So in an industrial setting, when you're developing and when you're going from what you might call the lab to the real world, you kind of initially first define an architecture and a system and a prototype, and then you test that prototype in a realistic setting, either on devices. So we have very advanced, for example, performance evaluation infrastructure across. We have loads of devices just in the lab, sitting in the lab. We test every single device and the performance of every single mechanism that is being introduced into the browser. So you kind of go from this idea of prototyping, getting real world data, and see how effective the method is, assessing the effectiveness of the technique, but also the cost of that in terms of battery, memory, scalability, the amount of data, bandwidth, and all of these things. And then based on this, you refine until you kind of start converging. And then you also test things on the nightly product and on the beta product, and then in some sort of A/B testing. So you go through all these stages before something gets practically rolled out to, I don't know, 70 million users, for example. And throughout this process, you need to work with the privacy team, with the security team, with the folks building the infrastructure, with the design team, with the people doing user experience research, to understand the impact of every single decision across the process. So it's this iteration, which means everything takes far longer, but the objective is not really a paper. It's a product that millions and millions of users across the world are using.
So I guess that what is interesting, what you've been describing, is this idea of this, let's say, dialogue between the sort of research aspect, which is probably the one that would go on a paper, but also how that's because of the infrastructure that exists within a business, the research can take its own feet, kind of like it takes some steps and then moves, and then it becomes something that people can use. Is it correct? Sort of the dialogue that happens between the two.
Exactly, yes. And throughout this process, and maybe sometimes even after you've rolled out something, you get a range of feedback mechanisms. You have the telemetry, maybe, so you have some sort of private analytics on the device or on the systems, but you also have people going on social media, posting feedback, contact you on email. So you get a range of reactions, and then you need to keep refining the product and the next iteration of it based on this feedback and the impact that this service might have had on this particular device user in this particular part of the world because of their setup or because of their network and whatever. So it's kind of an iterative and repetitive process.
And this is a question like more out of curiosity, like, are you working with the same type of people? Is the same somehow team? The plus, of course, the aspect that is more related to the kind of the business or not. So you have the ability also to be quite agile within the type of people that you normally that you collaborate with to develop this work.
So Brave is still small enough that you can have a direct conversation with people across different teams. So I work in the research team, but we work with product teams and all of that. But obviously, as these sort of companies and these sort of businesses scale, you need to have better mechanisms to engage with various stakeholders in the design of a product. So you have you kind of start with specification documents and technical description documents, and you kind of go through various review stages, privacy, security, user experience, machine learning, all of these things, in order to make sure that the product, first of all, is understood by the whole teams, and secondly, it's actually, you're not recreating the wheel somewhere, because some other team across the corporation might have thought about the same thing anyway.
So it's literally like the kind of the product, the browser is the thing that changes, but it's the same, and different people can contribute to.
Exactly right. Yeah.
So I guess this goes nicely to the other question, because you have this kind of the opportunity and working on this, and then the research and then the product. But if you want to imagine that speaking to people that kind of to the students at the PFL, but others that would like to kind of follow like some similar type of journey, what you would recommend to them in terms of yes, do this, yes, no, do this. Is there anything that you kind of in the space of your research that you think supposed to be shared with younger generations that wish to kind of take the same opportunity?
Yeah, so I think as the foundational pillars of you as an individual working and trying to do something big, you really need to have good understanding of the basics of the thing that you're good at or the thing that you want to be specialized in. Even though I work in this, I've been working in this space for over a decade. I wish, I don't know, I wish I knew better cryptography. I wish I understood the scalability challenges of machine learning systems on hardware or on silicon better. I wish I understood a little bit better how I can do profiling, for example, as an individual. Now, the advantage of in a way developing and growing up is that, okay, you can collaborate and you can have a team and you can work with several people. But it's important to get those foundations, at least in some areas, right, and get them kind of solid in order to develop yourself. But then beyond that, I think it's very important to be able to communicate and talk to other people in different sectors of an organization, being able to communicate your research, being able to communicate your ideas to folks in the design team, in the machine learning team, in the user experience team, in the legal team. They all speak different languages, and you need to be able to interact and communicate with them. And this comes with practice, and I think it's good to start this early.
So I guess it's been like a big learning curve, like not just because of like with the development of the browser, like there is also personal learning curve and understanding what skills do I need to grow, with people I need to collaborate, how do I communicate, and which is something that is quite interesting when, especially when a browser of the kind of touches different type of points. But if you kind of want to describe to us a challenge, what do you think that could be?
So in a way, your PhD or research or your university doesn't necessarily prepare you to face some of the challenges that you feel in real world. So for example, you go around, you design something and you test it and you evaluate it and all of that. And then when it comes to actually implementing it and talking to product teams, nobody picks it up because, for example, it's overly complicated. So you have to go back to the drawing board, start from beginning and see, okay, what parts can I trim or simplify or cut, and what impact can it have? So as scientists or as engineers, we might be over-engineering things sometimes, and that might have an impact on the performance or on the scalability or on the user experience. So I think these are specifically challenges that we face when thinking as scientists or engineers, trying to have a real-world product.
That's very like much one of the kind of the key issues that you might have, like that's talking about communication, because like we talk quite a lot about be very interdisciplinary, working in teams that come from different disciplines, but this idea of to be agile, to communicate. And the fascinating thing I want to kind of reflect on what you just said is the fact that reflects also the idea of communication reflects back to you. And the way you've been learning, I guess, like in the way how we should communicate this more easier. Like, did it change your practice in a sense, the way you've been working towards your kind of research?
At the end of the day, I think it's important that your research is kind of top notch, and your work is your work is respected in its right home, in the engineering or in the computer science community. Because that's where it's really the litmus test, and it will get not even a litmus test, a real hammer test, and that's where it gets tested out. But when it comes to going from the lab to the product, it's important to think about these earlier on in the process of designing, and this is what this is what took a bit of time to learn. But yeah, you need to start that dialogue very early in the life cycle of a product design.
I guess this is very, very wise advice to give anyone that would like to kind of collaborate in this type of projects. But I guess like moving towards the kind of the final questions, like something that I would like to ask, we started this conversation with the idea of the big challenge, they want you to kind of focus, but then now you developed with the team the product. And then how do you think you changed? Like, I don't want to say society because it's too big, but I guess the space where you think you made an impact. So you can take the word impact in a kind of any sort of way you think is relevant for you.
Until maybe a decade ago, privacy wasn't a big item on many people's agenda, and that rapidly got taken away by the surveillance kind of systems, and by the tracking and advertising analytics and all sorts of those sort of industries. So I think trying to now reclaim that space and building a kind of a user-first browser, or generally privacy-preserving systems, is really the thing that I think it's valuable today. So putting trust back into our devices, so in a way that we can trust that, okay, this device is doing what it promised to do. And the data that is being collected is actually data that is either I've been told about it already, or I have some agency over it, or I can engage with it, or I can request for its, I don't know, removal or deletion or whatever. So, and this is not going to happen overnight, but of course, browsers like Brave and generally approaches to privacy preserving or privacy enhancing technologies and systems, so pets kind of, they've had this effect that now there's a dialogue between service providers, businesses, and users that look, you can do analytics, you can provide services without fully jeopardizing my privacy or security. So I think this is hopefully the biggest and the long-term impact that this kind of work can have.
It's great to hear, to be honest, that there are people like you are thinking about this and taking agency and actions, which is quite promising. But the future is not so bad as we might think about.
I hope so.
But I guess this is literally, this is like a question relating to this. Did you see any rippling effect, by the way? Like as you had the product in place, this works, people use it, many. What's happening? So did you see anyone else that changed as a consequence?
Sure, yeah. And I think Brave might have been one of the earlier kind of browsers and private browsers in the system, but there are now more efforts, more users. Our own user base is growing, but there are other products also on the market, which means that now there is a demand for privacy preserving systems, and there's a demand for privacy. You see companies that trying to brand themselves as a privacy first kind of or company, and I don't know, some of these are only marketing techniques, but the important thing is that now there is awareness and there's user awareness, and that's the main thing. Once the users understand the consequences of this sort of tracking and data collection, they will demand and they will look for better products. And I think that has started making changes even with the folks which have traditionally have monopoly over this space, right? So the big tech, they are now understanding that they cannot go on with the same kind of collect as much as you can and eat as much as you can data approach that they've had for over a decade now.
Thank you very much for sharing this in such a way, and I hope the majority of people can listen to this and watch this, because this is very important. Because you said we need people first of all to understand, and therefore we need those that develop the code to actually change. So I think that we need both aspects, which are kind of both of them are very important. So we hope to have a great visibility of today's talk on this. It's very important. I guess as one of the last questions is, anything that I didn't ask you that you wish to share, sort of element that you think you wanted to say more?
Nothing that you didn't ask, but I just wanted to mention that generally works in this space of security, privacy, and systems, they require a dialogue, as you also mentioned, between users, developers, and the regulatory scene is very important. So it's important as product developers and also as users, we constantly engage with the regulatory system. We make decisions and vote carefully, because that will determine the fate of, in a way, humanity, in the way that AI systems are being rapidly rolled out in all aspects of our lives. So it's important that we deal with these challenges now before it's too late, basically.
Yeah, thank you again, for making this point quite clear, and then I think it's been quite brilliant to have that kind of rolled out and say, this is possible, change is possible. We have the skills, we can develop the technology, we can change, as you mentioned. Also, the regulatory aspect is part of the conversation, because it is something that is quite sometimes forgotten. So it needs to change it needs to come from different kind of parts in order to be workable, I guess.
Sure. I think as the impact of research and scientists talking more about these things in the public domain, specifically in social media, so beyond just academic papers, things have rapidly been changing, and user awareness and individuals' awareness has massively increased. And we also see regulatory forces in different parts of the world, from California to Europe and GDPR to Singapore to China. We see that various privacy and regulatory effects are rapidly coming in, and especially it's important that regulation comes with enforcement. And we see that some enforcements, especially in Europe, have been effective in changing the practice of big tech. And now some huge companies, they try to brand themselves or market themselves or position themselves as a privacy aware or privacy respecting kind of system, which is a huge change from what five years ago we would have heard. So I think it's important that we keep conversation, we keep informing the users, keep those tweets and blog posts or generally engagement with the public and with the broader media going, and make this stuff accessible to everybody.
Yeah, like I love this word accessible, because I feel that as one of the brave users, it's funny because you have like data, like you have information and many things you've been shielded from, like, and this literally gives you the scale of what you're basically saying. That's and the idea of accessibility, because like this, the privacy aspect, the physical one is something that is much more renowned as a kind of like any one person can understand, but the digital one, because technology changes so quickly, it's so hard to really grasp the sort of concept. And then yes, it's about regulation, but what does it mean, especially when you kind of thrown the message of refuse the cookies and everything else. That's why something was kind of personal motivation to really use the browser, because it really kind of helps me to go with it and understand that this exists, and that gives me the message about that.
Exactly, yeah.
So Hamed, it's been a pleasure talking with you, and I really hope that the message of being kind of pursuing the privacy agenda within the space of data and computer science and artificial intelligence will be kind of more and more adopted following your work and research and the actual outcome. So thank you very much for sharing your ideas and knowledge and research today.
Thanks very much. Thank you very much, and hope it will be useful to students and general audience.
Thank you for listening to the Opportunity Talks, powered by the EPFL Future Leaders platform. For more information, please visit futureleaders.tools.